Close your eyes for a moment. Now ask yourself, who are you when the door is shut, the lights are dim, and no one will ever know what you did or didn't do? Not who you pretend to be, not who you wish you were. Who are you, really? There's a version of you that exists only in private, a self that breathes when the performance ends, when the applause fades, when the audience of your life, your parents, your partner, your colleagues, your followers finally looks away, and in that silence, something strange happens. You might reach for your phone, not because you need something, but because the silence feels too heavy. You might say things to yourself you'd never say aloud. You might do things, small things, invisible things that no one would judge you for, because no one will ever see them. But here's the unsettling truth: you see them. You are the one witness who never leaves, the one audience that never blinks. And somewhere deep down, beneath all the noise and distraction, you are keeping score. You know when you've been kind to yourself and when you've been cruel. You know when you've honored your word and when you've quietly betrayed it. This isn't about morality. It's not about being good or bad. It's about something far more intimate. It's about the relationship you have with yourself when no one else is in the room. Think about it. When you're alone, do you keep the promises you made in public? Do you follow through on the goals you announced with confidence? Or do you become someone softer, someone who says, just this once, tomorrow? It doesn't really matter. Most of us lives split lives. There's the person we are in front of others, polished, composed, intentional. And then there's the person we are in solitude, unguarded, distracted, sometimes a little lost. The Sufis had a teaching about this. They spoke of muraqabah, the practice of watching oneself. Not in judgment, but in awareness. They believed that the soul reveals its true nature only when the masks fall away. And the masks always fall away when you're alone. In public, we wear our virtues like clothing. We smile when we're supposed to. We nod in agreement. We perform competence, kindness, confidence. But in private, the costumes come off. The script disappears. And what's left is raw, unedited, unwitnessed. Accepted as witnessed by you. You are always watching yourself. Even when you think no one is looking. Even when you convince yourself it doesn't count because it's just you. Especially then. There's a reason why so many spiritual traditions emphasize solitude, not as punishment, not as isolation, but as revelation. Because solitude strips away the need to perform. It removes the incentive to pretend. And in that removal, the truth surfaces. Who are you when there's no one to impress? When there's no one to perform for? When there's no reward for being impressive and no consequence for being small? Some people discover in that space that they are kinder than they thought, more generous, more patient. They find that when no one is watching, they still choose integrity. They still show up for themselves. They still honor the quiet commitments they made. But others discover something uncomfortable. They realize that without an audience, they lose their discipline. Their kindness becomes optional. Their promises become suggestions. They find that the version of themselves they present to the world is not the version that lives in solitude. And that dissonance, that gap between the public self and the private self creates a kind of inner fracture, a silent ache. Because deep down, you always know. The ancient Greeks called this eudaimonia, a kind of inner flourishing that comes not from external validation, but from living in alignment with your deepest self. And alignment can only exist when the person you are in public matches the person you are in private. This isn't about perfection. It's not about never struggling or never failing. It's about honesty. It's about closing the gap. It's about becoming whole. Because here's the paradox: the version of you that exists when no one is watching is the most honest version of who you are. Not because it's better or worse, but because it's unfiltered. It's the self without strategy, without performance, without armor. And if you don't like who you are in that space, if you find yourself avoiding your own company, numbing the silence, running from stillness, then that's the most important information you could ever receive. Because it means the work isn't out there. It's not in achieving more, impressing more, becoming more. The work is in here, in the quiet, in the unseeable, in the moments when no one will ever know except you. Who are you when the door closes, when the notifications stop, when the mirror isn't watching? That question isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to wake you up. Because the person you are in private is the foundation of everything else. It's the soil from which your public life grows. And if that soil is neglected, if it's filled with shortcuts, half-truths, abandoned intentions, then no amount of performance will ever make you feel whole. You can fool the world. You cannot fool yourself. Let's go deeper. There's a teaching in Zen that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The tasks don't change. The person doing them does. What changes is the quality of presence, the integrity of action. Whether you're chopping wood because someone is watching or because the wood needs chopping, most of us spend our lives building a self that looks good from the outside. We curate our image. We craft our story. We manage how others perceive us. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Humans are social creatures. We need connection, recognition, belonging. But somewhere along the way, we forget that we are also watching. That the most important audience isn't out there. It's in here. You are the one person you can never escape. You go to bed with yourself. You wake up with yourself. You live inside your own mind every single moment of every single day. And if that inner space is filled with pretense, with shortcuts, with the quiet compromises you hope no one notices, then you carry that weight everywhere. Alan Watts used to say that we spend so much time trying to become someone, we forget to be someone. Think about that. Becoming is future-focused. It's about the image, the achievement. The version of you that will finally be enough once you reach some distant milestone. But being is present. It's about the person you are right now in this moment when no result is on the line. Who are you when there's no trophy, no title, no applause? That's not a hypothetical question. That's the question your soul is asking you every single day. And here's what most people don't realize: the discomfort you feel in solitude, the restlessness, the urge to scroll, to distract, to fill the silence that's not boredom. That's avoidance. You're avoiding yourself, because when you're alone, the masks slip. The stories you tell others stop working, and you're left with the raw, unedited truth of who you actually are beneath all the narratives. Some people discover in that space that they like themselves, that they're good company, that even without validation, even without an audience, they still show up with care, with effort, with integrity. But many people discover the opposite. They realize they've been performing so long, they don't know who they are when the performance stops. They realize they've outsourced their sense of self to other people's opinions. And when those people aren't watching, they feel hollow. This is what the Sufis called the nafs, the ego, the false self, the constructed identity that depends on external validation to survive. And the spiritual journey, they said, is not about destroying the ego. It's about seeing through it, watching it, recognizing when it's running the show. When no one is watching, the ego has no fuel. It can't perform. It can't impress. It can't prove anything. And in that powerlessness, something truer can emerge. Your essence. Your being. The part of you that exists whether anyone notices or not. This is where wisdom lies, not in what you say, not in what you post, but in who you are when the lights go out. Do you keep your word to yourself? Do you follow through on the small, private commitments? Do you treat yourself with the same kindness you offer others? Or do you abandon yourself the moment no one is watching? There's a beautiful line from the Tao Te Ching. Care about what other people think, and you will be their prisoner. But the reverse is also true. Care only about what you think, and you become free. Not in a selfish way, not in a way that ignores responsibility or kindness, but in a way that centers your life around internal alignment rather than external approval. Because here's the truth. You will never feel whole if the person you are in public doesn't match the person you are in private. You can have all the success in the world, all the followers, all the praise. But if you go home at night and can't look yourself in the eye, if you know you've been cutting corners, breaking promises, betraying your own values, when no one's looking, then none of it will feel real. The gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are is the source of most human suffering. Not because you're bad, not because you're broken, but because you're fractured. Split. Living a double life, even if no one else knows it. And the exhausting part, you can't hide from yourself. You can distract yourself, numb yourself, avoid yourself, but you can't escape yourself. So the question becomes, what if you stop trying to escape? What if you turn toward yourself with the same curiosity, the same compassion, the same attention you give to others? What if solitude wasn't something to fill, but something to enter? Not as a test, not as punishment, but as an invitation to meet yourself, to see yourself clearly, to close the gap between the mask and the face beneath it. This is where transformation begins, not in the big public declarations, not in the New Year's resolutions announced to the world, but in the small, private moments when you choose integrity even though no one will ever know. When you keep a promise to yourself, even though you could easily break it. When you show up even though no one's watching. When you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, not for applause, but because it aligns with who you want to be. That's when you start becoming whole. So how do you actually do this? How do you close the gap? How do you become the same person in private that you are in public? It starts with one simple practice, witnessing yourself without judgment, not analyzing, not criticizing, not fixing, just watching. The Buddhists call this sati mindfulness. The Sufis call it muraqabah self-observation. The Stoics called it prosoti attention. Different words, same truth. You cannot change what you cannot see. And most of us go through life on autopilot. We react, we scroll, we distract, we numb. We move through our days without ever truly watching ourselves. But what if you started paying attention? What if you became curious about the person you are when no one's looking? Not to judge yourself, not to shame yourself, but to see yourself clearly. Here's a simple exercise tonight. When you're alone, pause for a moment. Put your phone down. Turn off the noise and just notice, how do you feel? Not how you think you should feel. Not the version you'd tell someone if they asked, but the raw, honest feeling beneath the surface. Are you restless, tired, anxious, numb, peaceful? Just notice. Don't fix it. Don't change it. Just see it. And then ask, who am I being right now? Am I being the person I want to be? Am I keeping my word to myself? Am I treating myself with kindness, or am I harsh? Am I present, or am I running? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations to wake up, to step out of autopilot and into awareness. Because here's the thing, integrity isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about your private actions matching your stated values. If you say you value health, but eat junk food alone at midnight, there's a misalignment. If you say you value presence, but scroll for hours when no one's watching, there's a misalignment. If you say you value growth, but avoid the hard work in private, there's a misalignment. And those misalignments, those quiet betrayals, they accumulate. They create inner friction. They make you feel like a fraud, even if no one else knows. But the moment you start witnessing yourself, something shifts. You can't unsee what you see. And once you see the gap, you can start closing it, not through willpower, not through self-punishment, but through gentle, consistent choice. Choose to keep one small promise to yourself today, just one, even if no one will ever know. Maybe it's getting out of bed when your alarm goes off instead of hitting snooze. Maybe it's doing the dishes instead of leaving them for tomorrow. Maybe it's sitting in silence for 5 minutes instead of reaching for your phone. These aren't grand gestures. They're not Instagram worthy, but they matter because they build the foundation of trust between you and yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself when no one's watching, you send a signal to your subconscious. I am worthy of my own follow-through. I matter even when no one else sees. And over time, that changes everything. You start to feel more solid, more whole, more integrated. Because the person you are in public and the person you are in private start to merge. There's a line from the poet Rumi. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. The world doesn't need another performance. It needs people who are real. People who show up the same in private as they do in public. People who've done the inner work of becoming whole. And that work happens in the small, unseeable moments. In the choices you make when no one's applauding. In the integrity you practice when there's no reward. This is the practice. Witness yourself harshly, not critically, but honestly. See yourself clearly. See the gaps. See the misalignments. And then gently, lovingly start closing them. One choice at a time. One moment at a time. One private promise kept at a time. Because the truth is, you're always building your life. Every action is a brick. Every choice is a direction. And the person you become is the sum of all the choices you make when no one's watching. So what are you building? Is it a life of integrity, of alignment, of presence? Or is it a life of performance, of shortcuts, of quiet compromises? Only you know. And that's the most powerful thing about it, because only you can change it. Not tomorrow. Not when you're ready. Not when conditions are perfect. Right now, in this moment, when no one's watching, that's when it counts most. Let me tell you a story. There was once a student who went to a wise teacher and said, "I want to become enlightened. I want to be free. What must I do?" The teacher smiled and said, "First, show me who you are when you think no one is watching." The student was confused. "But that's private. That's just me." "Exactly," the teacher said. "That's where freedom begins. Because here's the truth, most spiritual teachings won't tell you enlightenment isn't some distant state of bliss. It's not about levitating or glowing or transcending your humanity. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness means there's no gap between who you are inside and who you are outside. It means the person you are at 3 a.m., alone in your room, is the same person you are at 3 p.m. in front of a crowd. It means you don't need an audience to be kind. You don't need validation to show up. You don't need applause to do the right thing. You do it because it aligns with your soul, because it's who you are. Because integrity isn't a performance, it's a way of being. And when you live like that, something extraordinary happens. You stop feeling fractured. You stop feeling like an imposter. You stop feeling like you have to manage different versions of yourself depending on who's watching. You become one, integrated, whole. The Sanskrit word for this is satya, truthfulness. But not just truth in speech. Truth in being. Living in alignment with your deepest nature, regardless of who's in the room. This is what the mystics were pointing to. This is what the philosophers were teaching. This is what every wisdom tradition whispers. Be the same person in the dark that you are in the light. Not because someone's keeping score. Not because you'll be rewarded. But because your soul craves coherence. It craves alignment. It craves the peace that comes from living without inner contradiction. Think about how exhausting it is to wear different masks, to code, switch between your public self and your private self, to remember which version of you you're supposed to be in any given moment. It's exhausting and it's unnecessary. Because the moment you commit to being the same person everywhere, the moment you stop performing and start being, you drop a weight you didn't even know you were carrying. You become lighter, freer, more yourself. This doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you never struggle or fail or fall short. It means you're honest about it. It means you don't hide from yourself. It means when you mess up, you acknowledge it to yourself first, then to others if needed. You stop living a double life. You stop keeping secrets from yourself. You stop pretending the small compromises don't matter, because they do matter. Not because you'll be punished, but because they fragment you. They create dissonance. They make it harder to trust yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of confidence, of peace, of resilience, of growth. When you trust yourself, when you know that you'll keep your word to yourself, even when no one's watching, you move through the world differently. You stand taller, you speak clearer, you show up bolder, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're aligned, you're whole, you're integrated. And people feel that. They might not be able to name it, but they sense it. They sense the difference between someone who's performing and someone who's simply being. So here's the invitation: stop performing. Stop managing your image. Stop trying to be impressive. Just be real. Be honest. Be the same person when the door closes that you are when it's open. Keep the promises you make to yourself, especially the small ones. Show up even when no one's applauding. Choose integrity even when there's no reward. Not because it's easy, not because it's comfortable, but because it's the only way to become whole. And wholeness, true, deep, unshakable wholeness, is what you've been searching for all along. Not achievement, not recognition, not validation. Wholeness, the feeling of being at peace with yourself. The feeling of looking in the mirror and recognizing the person looking back. The feeling of going to bed knowing you didn't betray yourself today. That's the goal. That's the work. That's the freedom. And it starts in the quiet, in the unseeable, in the moments when no one's watching. So I'll ask you one more time, and I want you to sit with this question tonight. Who are you when no one is watching? Not who you wish you were, not who you pretend to be. Who are you? Really? Because that's the person you need to get to know. That's the person you need to honor. That's the person you need to become friends with. And when you do, when you close the gap, when you align your inner world with your outer world, when you stop performing and start being, that's when you'll finally feel whole. That's when you'll finally feel free. That's when you'll realize you were never broken. You were just split. And now, finally, you're coming back together.